Hello, and welcome to the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast, the podcast redefining women's health, one unfiltered conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jacqueline Rose, and every week I'll sit down with leading women's health experts and real women to share their lived experiences, bust health myths, challenge outdated and uninformed narratives, and explore what's really possible for women. We'll talk about periods, fertility, menopause, hormones, aging, and everything in between. This podcast is for every woman who ever felt confused, dismissed, or left out of the conversation about her own health. It is a space to celebrate women, break the silence, and open up conversations between mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. Please hit the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode and share this podcast with your daughters, family, and friends. Let's get on with the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast. If you are watching on YouTube, you will notice that I'm in a different location to my regular one. So that is going to, hope that won't throw you, but hopefully the conversation will be just as fun and just as interesting, despite the fact that my background is a little bit different. And if you're hearing some different background noises, I apologize in advance, but hopefully this conversation is going to be so fascinating. You're not going to be worrying about any of the differences and changes in this particular episode. So welcome back. And I'm very excited to introduce our guest for today's episode. I know we're going to have a really fun, interesting conversation. We're going to be talking about all the things that I love to talk about: women's health, menopause, functional medicine, energetics of women's health. Maybe we'll even have some conversations that may be a little bit controversial and ruffle some feathers and push some buttons, but that's what we love to do the most on this podcast. So joining me today is Kristin. Welcome, Kristin. Tell us who you are, what you do, and we'll jump straight in.
Hi, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Kristin Sitek. I'm an energy alchemist and functional health practitioner. I essentially help build safety in the body. I work on the energetic level to clear blockages, specifically stored emotions that are running interference with the body's physical ability to heal and our ability to move forward with emotional freedom.
Amazing. Okay. So I know we're going to get into lots of interesting things, but maybe first tell us about the modalities you use, about the way that you're working with women. What is it that you're sort of looking for? What are you tuning into? How is your work a little bit different to maybe other practitioners, other health practitioners that women may be familiar with?
It's because I look at the whole person. I would describe my person as the whole woman approach. And I do work with men, but for the purpose of this conversation, I'm really tuning in to see where's the stuck energy, what are the belief patterns, what are the self-sabotaging behaviors that are informing chaos in the body. Because let's say someone turns up with a gut issue and they've been dealing with this chronic gut issue for 10 years. Sometimes it can be as simple as there's a parasite that has gone undetected in some testing. It could be as simple as that. But then my brain goes to like, what made the environment so friendly for a parasite to cause such chaos? And if you look at the gut energetically, there are some things that we really need to pay attention to. That governs your solar plexus chakra is connected to the gut, and that governs personal power, your ability to set boundaries, your confidence. And especially in women, that's been threatened by our society. We are taught to play small. We are taught to be a pathological people pleaser. We're taught to be unselfish. But what the body gets the message is I'm not safe because I'm worried about everybody else and I can't set my own boundaries. And so I'm running myself ragged. And I'm at like, when I ask women, what are your priorities? Tell me your priorities. And then I ask the question of like, how does your life demonstrate those priorities? And their health isn't even on the list because everybody else has filled up the list. Right. So I really help them shift their perspective, get their priorities aligned with what they say they want, and give them permission to set those boundaries and really put their health at the forefront. And when we talk about health, it's not just what goes into your body. It's the things that you're listening to. It's the people that you surround yourself. It's the intake that you're giving and the inputs that you're giving your body. And so often we're missing those factors. So it's looking at what are we really embodying? How are we moving, breathing, thinking, acting, believing, sleeping? All those factors go into this. And what's the energy that we're walking around with? That is a huge factor in our health that too often goes unlooked at.
Yeah. So what you're saying is so different because So I come from a functional medicine approach. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a functional medicine doctor. I don't pretend to be. But the functional medicine approach to my work, and that is, becoming so popular, is this holistic approach where we don't just look at the symptoms. We don't just treat the symptoms. We're always peeling back the layers of asking why, why. But you're taking that approach one step or even three steps beyond that, because you're not only looking at why do you have the symptoms, not just let's treat the symptoms, but really, peeling back the layers of why. But you're bringing this whole other language to the conversation of, it's not just about the symptoms. It's not just about the biology of what's going on in your body. It's about the environment. It's about the energetic. It's about your mindset. It's about all these things that we have been told or haven't even been included in the conversation. It's not relevant. Your environment or your energy or your mindset, like, it's a nice thing to maybe think about and nice thing to add to the conversation, but it's not going to actually make a profound difference to your biology. And what you're bringing here is that actually the energy flows, this sort of very deep, profound, maybe spiritual language of really asking some really deep questions, maybe at the core of what's really going on with you from a biological symptomatic perspective.
I'm really glad you brought up the word symptom, because in our world, we think, okay, here's a symptom, give me the medicine, and in functional medicine, it's kind of now switched. Instead of a pill, here's a supplement. But what I want people to understand is that symptoms are your body's expression. So your body doesn't have a voice. And so the discomfort that you're getting from a symptom is actually the most beautiful messenger that your body could possibly give you, because it's giving you feedback that something you're doing is not aligned to what your body's highest and best good is. So let's say you have a stomach pain. So then I'm going to ask, like, well, when did that start? Well, it started 2 years ago. What was going on during your life during 2 years ago? Oh, I got a divorce. Oh, or I got, fired from my job. Okay. We need to unpack that, because your body's giving you symptoms. So yeah, we might need to support the physical body, but we also need to look at the emotions that are driving that. And so that's really where I seek to kind of bridge that gap, because in functional medicine, and I'm not a functional medicine doctor, I'm a practitioner, but there is this notion that for every ill, there's a pill, and there's this illusion that there's one root cause. There never is. There's usually a collection and the synergy of things that are going on in the body. And the good news is, once you start to work on one system, a lot others come back online. But that said, the body is not a machine. We work synergistically. Every organ works together. You can't work on your gut and forget about your liver. You can't work about your liver and forget about your hormones. Like, everything works together, which is why I really encourage people to see the synergy and to look at themselves from a radical place of self-love and self-compassion, and really trying to understand and decode those symptoms so that you can give it the right inputs, because the body has such an incredibly magnificent ability to self-heal with the right inputs.
Yeah. I love what you're saying. The body has an innate ability and knowledge to know how to self-heal. I always say that the body always wants to be in balance. And we have all the, and especially, we're talking about hormonal health, but even just general health. Our body wants to be in balance. Symptoms was not God's innate design in creating the human being that, assuming you believe that God created humans, but let's just take that, for our conversation, whoever created the humans, that that symptoms were not part of the innate design. And therefore, if we have symptoms, we've got to understand why, what, how, and the fact that the body really wants to be in health. That's how it was created. And therefore, when it's not in health, or when there are symptoms, or when you don't feel in balance, we've got to start asking sort of what really is going on. So maybe let me ask you, what are you seeing? What are women coming to you with sort of as their complaints, as their symptomology, as the reasons why they come to you in the first place? And then what are you really seeing as very common features of women's experiences from this sort of deeply energetic place?
It's really fascinating, because different generations have different understanding of their problems and their symptoms, so to speak. So,
excellent.
The younger girl that's in her 20s is so hyper focused on their body image. They're coming to me with, I want to, with the weight loss thing. And then 40s to 50s, they're terrified of perimenopause. And with that comes the night sweats, the inflammation. They are under the impression that everything has to be blamed on perimenopause. So it's hormones. Hormones must be the reason. And then 50 to 60 can be a lot of different things. Sometimes it's, I have quite a few that have chronic gut issues or psoriasis or skin things. But it's interesting when you look at the generations, because I would say like 50 to 60 plus, there's like, when you do the intake form, part of the questions is like, what are your stresses? And they'll look me dead in the eye and say, oh, I don't have any stress. I don't have any trauma. And then when I get into their energetic field, it's like, whoa, that might be a little bit misleading. There's no like correlation, whereas the younger generation is very in tune with their emotions. They're very in tune with how trauma impacts the body, and they're willing to talk about it a little bit more, but they have the pressures of social media. And so I would say the common thread is like, when you really get down to it, it's a disconnect from their body. It's a disconnect from their intuition. There's a lot of self-worth wound issues. There's a lot of like a lack of radical self-love and like outsourcing our worth externally, and really kind of making our body's image what determines our worth. So I see a lot of that. And then when I dive into the energetic field, it really runs the gamut. I mean, you see all sorts of things that are really kind of running in the background. But what's really cool about the energy alchemy work that I do, it's like helping people make that their superpower. Anything that we go through, the intent is that we sign up for those lessons when we come into this earth, and it's something we get to grow through. It's something we get to alchemize, and it becomes our superpower. So that's really what I help people understand.
Wow.
And help them metabolize everything that they've gone through. And then it's amazing to see, once we get through that, suddenly these chronic gut issues are lightening.
Right. So then my next question is, do you then see, when you do that deep, profound, energetic alchemy work, the sort of the reframing of their lived experiences, that the symptoms naturally disappear? Maybe disappear is too strong a word, but do they naturally sort of reduce?
Yes, I've seen some really profound things. I had a 24-year-old woman come to me, and this is someone who's worked with functional medicine doctors, and she struggled with extreme anxiety, extreme depression. And this is someone who is very successful on the outside. Your typical type A woman, where she ran her own business, she was working in corporate, she was an engineer, she recently got engaged, and everything on her social feed looked curated. She's absolutely stunning, but she was really struggling, and she had tried all the things. And she originally came into me, and she's like, I have skin issues and I've got issues, and I really want to work in the functional health side. And we were no more than 30 seconds into the conversation, and she was in tears, and I hadn't even asked a question. And so I thought, if I tell her everything we need to do to get this gut back in line and all the nutrition upgrades, she might have this could be dangerous for her. She's not in a position to do that. So I was like, come work with me on the energetics, and let's see where we land. Let's clean up that stuff, and let's see where we go. Inside of 3 sessions, her anxiety is gone. Her stress she can navigate stress with ease. So running these 2 jobs and a relationship, everything has come better. And what we found was there was things from past lives that were kind of haunting her. There was a lot of anxiety that was just in her field that wasn't even her energy, that we cleared out, and it completely resolved her issues inside of 3 months. So I've seen something like that. Or, I have a lot of women that will come to me with overuse of alcohol consumption. And when I dive into that, they really want to understand, like, I have every intention of kicking this habit, but I don't know why I do it. So you get into the field and you understand, like, oh, there's actually some inner child work where you were told that you were too much, too loud, too successful, too this, too that. So she's using it to pacify her greatness. And so again, we're removing all that energetic suffocation that was coded in as a child. And then suddenly her desire from alcohol just naturally shifted. Is she completely sober now? No, but now she has a relationship where it's like, I don't need it. And that's a huge, huge win, because good luck healing if you're drinking alcohol every single day. It's just not possible.
100%, 100%.
And you can't always mindset your way through things like that.
So that's what I wanted to say. I think that, look, I know mindset work is super, super important, and it plays a really strong role. I know that the whole CBT approach of changing your thoughts, changing your behavior, your thoughts impact your behavior. Sometimes, and I know people don't like to hear this, but sometimes your thoughts are just your thoughts. And even though they are your thoughts, they don't, they sometimes have more power than you are able to fight against. Sometimes, it would be marvelous. We would all be healthy, healed, balanced individuals if we could control our thoughts so easily, especially the perimenopausal women who are lying awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, running through the thoughts of what happened through the day. You know, like if it was that easy, we'd all be sleeping fantastically and everything would be fine. But sometimes it's not just as easy as change the thought in your head.
Right. So that's where I come in and like, okay, what's driving that? Like what got coded in at a very young age, or what got coded into your field that you don't need to carry anymore. It doesn't even have to be in your childhood. It could be what you picked up in the corporate environment. Like before I went down this path, I was in corporate for 14 years and I was quite literally hustling for safety. I was hustling because my worth was tied to how much money I can make, what to being number one producer, to dominating in a male dominated environment. And you best believe that did a number on my nervous system. And so it's really just kind of looking at all that landscape and understanding, okay, here are my thoughts, but then bringing some loving curiosity, because there is some integration work and it's not like a magic pill where you go lie on my virtual table, I do the work and then boom, there's integration. So there's a loving invitation for you to bring some curiosity to those thoughts and ask yourself, like, is that really true? Like, do I really need to think that? Because that's your ego. When it's coming from source, higher consciousness, love, God, whatever you believe in, it's pure love. There is no ruminating thoughts. There's nothing negative. It is literally a drop in, like love. It's your ego that's doing it. So there's all these subconscious files that are coming to light. And it's like, sometimes they're coming up because they're ready to be healed. And you do need to pay attention to them. Like, I wonder what led me to believe that. Oh, I can see that, this is an old pattern, or, I got really upset today because my boss made me feel like I was insufficient. So it's always like, that's the other thing. It's like, to your point, it's not always the truth. Sometimes they're just old programming. So it's like bringing a loving curiosity, and that's how you can kind of metabolize this and think like, okay, I'm aware that I'm having this thought. I'm so grateful that I'm aware. Now you're wanting seeds of gratitude. Then you can shift out of it. But if you're giving it and fueling it, it's like the train that has gone off the tracks, and it's like, yeah, good luck getting that back on tracks.
Yeah. You've brought up gut health a few times, and I want to sort of delve into that because gut health is sort of this new fancy word that's out there, the gut microbiome and inflammation and all these different things. So can you break down, firstly, from a sort of functional health perspective of what is this whole field of gut health, and then sort of connect it to the energetics and how you see it from a deeper perspective? I know that we use phrases like, our guts, we know that our gut is our second brain. The gut really does a lot more in our body than we ever gave it credit for. The relationship between the gut and the brain, and the connection between that two. But we even use phrases in our popular language of, I've got butterflies in my stomach, or like this nervous feeling in my stomach, like us, without even realizing we're using phrases that sort of highlight that our gut does more than what we assume it does, which is, digestion. So talk to me a little bit about the gut, and then sort of bring in the sort of deeper energetic side of it.
Oh, great question. Okay, so the gut is where we digest our food. It's where we assimilate nutrition, assuming it's working well. It also plays a very key role in detoxification. When we're talking about detoxification, the first two phases happen in our liver. There's actually a change process. So detoxification isn't like, I'm going to take a green juice or I'm going to fast. It's actually a change process. So let's pick on estrogen, for example. Estrogen is a hormone. It's a chemical messenger that's made in the body. But for it to leave the body, it doesn't just fall out of the body and leave. It actually has to go through a change process, which happens between phase 1 and phase 2 of the liver. Assuming that's not congested, it'll move on to phase 3 that happens in the gut. So picture like an envelope that has this package hormone in a slightly changed form. And then if the gut is working well, it'll get moved out through the gut. So it plays a huge role in that detoxification, which is why in my practice, I work on gut health first, not hormones. And I always support the liver. Your gut has a communication highway with your brain. So when we're talking about gut instincts or butterflies, that's actually a direct correlation. They're always sending those chemical text messages back and forth. And there's also even a skin gut barrier. So folks that are listening that have psoriasis or eczema, it's not a skin issue. You didn't get that because you don't have a medication on your skin. You got that because the detoxification has been challenged between your liver and your gut. And so it plays such an incredible role. That's where our happy hormones are made, like your dopamine, your serotonin, your melatonin. It plays an incredible role in our overall health, so much so that there's so much research that's being done, and they tell us we've only scratched the surface. And so From a functional health perspective, to look at the health of an individual and ignore the gut would be a huge disservice. It touches every function. And then from an
You
energetic
also know that
standpoint,
the immune system lives in the gut,
yes,
which
yeah,
no one talks about. You know, everyone thinks, look at the immune system, it's sort of all over the body, but it's sort of its main function starts in the gut. And so if your gut is out of balance, if you're not eating the right food, if you've got any gut dysregulation, that is directly going to impact your immune system and how, we know our immune system is, chronic disease, autoimmune disease, all these other things, that's starting off in your gut.
it absolutely is. Yeah, so over 70%, some people argue 80% of the gut live in the immune system. And you'll have people listening in, well, like, well, I must have a pretty good gut because I'm never really sick. Well, hold on. If you're inflamed and you're dealing with anxiety or depression, you can't bypass the gut. It plays such a huge role in that. Or you might have, the rosacea, like I said, the skin issues. You might not be getting colds frequently, but your body might be sending you other things that's not quite right. So, the alarms that you want to look for, so to speak, that your body is sending, like constant bloating, alternating, constipation and loose bowels or inconsistent bowels, stomach pain after eating, chronic food sensitivities, or skin issues, or brain fog, low mood, low energy, all that stuff kind of points back to the gut as well as other systems. But those aren't things that we have to live with. Those are things that are saying, hey, something's not quite right. Let's revisit this.
Yeah, yeah. And then
And
from
then
the energetic perspective, what does the gut represent, and what are we missing about the gut?
yeah, that's probably one of the most important things. And that's how I actually got into this field, because when I was working in corporate in those male dominated environments, like right around, the time that I was considering a switch, I had left a relationship, I relocated, I left a job that was well into six figures. I was renowned. I was the number one producer in the country. I was so good at what I did, but I looked around, I'm like, and I got this huge award and I was in Cabo, and my name was called. I stood up to standing ovation and I looked around and thought, like, shouldn't this feel better? Like, why do I feel so empty? It meant nothing to me. It's like it was like I met expectations by being the mess. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't love this anymore. And then I was chronically ill. Like, no matter what I ate, my stomach bloated, no matter what and I was eating very nutritiously. And I was just like, I just feel good. So I went down this path where, I got all the certifications, I did the supplement, I did the detoxification, but my stomach was always bloated. And I carried this weight around my waist. It was like that tire. And, as I deepen into this, I'm like, oh, that's cortisol, because cortisol's role is a long-term stress hormone. So I think in ancient times that would have been flood, famine, war. So the body thinks, I got your back. I'm going to thicken you up around your waist. I mean, there's no space. I'm going to go to your back and then the back of the arms.
Right.
So as I went down that path, I'm like, I have to deal with this. And I'm like, well, I left my corporate job. I left the relationship. I'm back in my own home. I should be good. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And then I was having anxiety and I was having depression and panic attacks. And I had this one moment where I said something I really didn't mean. And it was so scary that my parents left what they were doing and they came to my house. And it was just like, we got to do something. And so that's how I discovered energy healing. And once I started going down that path, that chronic weight gain, and I'm talking like quite a bit, started to melt away. Like my nervous system, that I would say that it was kind of like a pot that always had a constant boil, and it would take something as silly as me dropping a spoonful of almond butter on the floor, and then I would freak out. And I was like, this isn't the way I want to live. But as I went down that path, like none of that was happening anymore. And I could give myself more compassion and I had more self-love. And then all of a sudden my relationships improved, because the highest form of love is self-love. And so to round back to your question, it houses all of that. So if you have emotional distress or trauma or anxiety, it could quite literally sit there. There are some other chakras too that can carry that. But the whole point is if you're pathological people pleasing and unable to set boundaries because you lack self-love and self-worth, it's going to sit right there. So you could do all the protocols, you can eat really well, you can move your body, you can sleep, and you can do all that. But if that goes unaddressed and your gut isn't improving, that's often the missing link that is going to get your health to the next level once you are brave enough to metabolize those. And then once you metabolize them, then you can see them from a higher perspective and realize, actually, all that happened for me, not to me. And now you become the hero in your own story.
Yeah. So profound. And and I know for a lot of women, they don't want to touch it. They don't want to go there. It's too raw. It's too difficult.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, like spiritual woo woo, but it's really, really powerful. You know, when you allow yourself into this conversation, it's really, really powerful.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was my experience. And my gut health issue started in 2013. I was 24 at the time, and I woke up to a knock on the door, and my twin brother walked in, and his hair was matted with tears. And he burst the door open. It was 2:46 in the morning, and he said, "Dave died." That was my older brother. And from then
Wow.
on, I had horrible gut issues. I gained weight, I wasn't sleeping, and all the things that came along with it. And then, of course, after that, like, I'm gonna get my health in my own hands. I'm gonna work out and do all the things.
Yeah.
But I never got better. And so I reluctantly, there was one time in Vegas where I got flown out. I was on the top performance panel. I was #1 nationally ranked, killed the speech, but I was drunk. I was drunk the night before. I showed up to the panel at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was still under the influence. And while I did great, I
Wow.
had my hand was shaken by the president of the company, the VIP. Everybody was thrilled with me, except my boss. She knew. She pulled me aside. She said, "If you don't go to therapy, I'm going to report you to HR." So I went to therapy, sat in the chair, and I'll never forget it. I was on her chair, on her couch that I've been sat on one too many times. It was a sunken couch. It was
Yeah.
a dimly lit room, and she had her glasses on. She had her little notebook, and she's like, "Why are you here?" And I told her. She's like, "Tell me how it happened." And I couldn't even get those words up, and I just started sobbing and I started convulsing, and I finally got the words out, and she started crying. So now, as a pathological people pleaser, as an empath, I started comforting her, and then she
Oh
proceeded to
my
cancel
gosh.
4 out of 8 sessions. And then I was like, well, this isn't working. Let me try somebody else. And then I got hit on. And so therapy was so traumatic for me that I
Yes,
was like, I'm
yes.
not doing this anymore. And the fact that I had to sit there and relive it and relive the past, I was like, that wasn't the issue. The issue was that I had all this grief and unresolved trauma around it. And you're asking me to relive it. Now, I'm not suggesting that therapy isn't powerful and it can't be helpful. What I am suggesting is that it might not be right for everyone. And the person that you choose to work with really matters. But from an
Yeah.
energy standpoint, it doesn't just work on the mind level, it's removing the energetic charge of that event so that you can work on it on the mind level and actually metabolize it. But to throw somebody in with something so traumatic like that and have me relive that put me in this cycle, in this path where I could literally feel, I had 3 knee surgeries, so the trauma is going to go where it's easiest to pick on. My knee would hurt, my stomach would not when I was going in there, and I was like, oh my God, I want to do anything but talk about this. And that's the beauty
Yeah.
of energy healing is you don't have to talk at all. You literally lay down and you receive, and then I take all those
Yeah.
charges out. And then at the end, if people are open to it, I can reflect back the images that I'm seeing, the sounds, the smells, and really help them see from a different perspective all of that. And if they choose to talk to me, they can. Most often they do, but there's usually this beautiful release where a lot of times there is crying, but it's like a beautiful cry. It's like I feel so relieved, like my shoulders can relax. Like I don't
Yeah.
have like the last session I did, she's like, I feel like I have this weight on my chest and it's so heavy. And I'm like, okay. So
Yeah.
we did a couple of things. I'm like, put it a mile away from you. How does that feel? Feel better. Okay. Shrink it. How does that feel? I feel better. And then you do what you need to do. But for me, it's been a life-saving mechanism. And I've seen such radical changes with the people I've worked on that I wish everybody knew about this.
Yeah. It's so profound what you're saying. And I think that because it lives in this space of like, we don't really understand what's going on. So therefore, for some women, for some people, it's like, we don't understand it. We're not going to go there. But I love the way you're expressing it. I love how you're describing it. It's very, very powerful. Um, I want to go back to sort of the women's health piece of our conversation a little bit and sort of focus a little bit more on sort of the perceptions of women's health, how women understand their health, the way that things have sort of been, you know, connected to this very deep messaging that women have received around, the way we should show up, the way we have to show up, the expectations that we have, the way that fact that women's health is not really understood within the conventional Western medicine approach, and how that has sort of impacted and influenced how we show up as women. So, what are you sort of seeing, or how do you understand that whole sort of that piece of it where women really are not getting the answers that they need often from their doctors? We know that women with certain chronic issues like PCOS, fibromyalgia, endometriosis can take years to get a diagnosis. So what are you how do you sort of unpack that conversation?
That's actually something I see quite a bit of, and why a lot of folks end up working with me is because they've gone to the doctor and they've heard the most frustrating thing, and that's
Right.
your labs look normal. And when you're
Yes.
sick and you don't feel good and you
Yeah.
know that you don't feel well, that is the most disheartening thing that a doctor can say to you.
Yes.
And part of the
Yes.
reason why that happens is I really believe that doctors have good intent, but they are working in a system that was not built to support women. Most of the
Nope.
studies in conventional medicine were done on a male population. And
Yep.
so when you're getting these outdated tests, which is first of all an issue on and of itself, but you're going in to look at a test that has a population from everything from like a 10-year-old boy who's walked into it to a 90-year-old woman. It's such a vast range. So when you say your labs are normal, that tells
Yeah.
us virtually nothing. And when
Yeah.
you're sick, we're not even looking for normal because, where I sit, like normal's not, we're not doing so hot. And it's because our soil is depleted, our nutrition is way out of whack, we're not sleeping, we got too much screen, we got too much stress and all the things. So normal's kind of problematic. But when people work with me, there's a tighter range, and I'm not looking for normal, I'm looking for optimal. And so
Yes.
even if you find yourself in the normal range, but you don't feel good, that's where the clinical experience comes into play. Like, okay, you're telling me that this isn't normal for you. Maybe your normal is outside of the range or inside the range. So, but we don't think to go get tested when we're at our optimal health. So we don't know that. But that
Yeah.
is why getting to know the person in front of you and understanding what's going on in their life, what's going on with their energy levels, what's going on with their brain clarity, what's going on emotionally is
Yeah.
so, so important, because normal for you and normal for me are two vastly different things because we are bio individual. And so the
Yeah.
lab tests are important in my practice, but it's not something I lead with. I first work on the energetic level, and I
Yeah.
also work on nutrition, sleep, movement, stress reduction, because there's
Yes.
no amount of supplements or testing that is going to undo you sleep eating just 300 calories a day, or you sleeping just 3 hours a day, or
Yeah. Yeah.
um, having chronic stress. We really need to get all the foundations settled, because if you think about it, like, would you ever want to build a house on a crumbling foundation? That won't go well. You always have
No.
to start with a really strong foundation. And so,
Yeah.
while I think testing is important, it can be super empowering. And I've actually seen stress go down when I look at a gut test or a hormone panel, be like, okay, you don't have energy because your cortisol is flatlined. And so
Yeah.
that's why you're waking up like this. Or your gut issues, you actually do have some bacterial imbalances, you have some overgrowth, and we can actually work on this and correct it. But it's making sure the person in front of you knows that it's simply an imbalance. It's not their identity. And sometimes people can see
Mm.
that and be like, oh, I'm sick, or oh, I have a parasite and so I'll never get better, or
Yeah.
my hormones are depleted. That's my story, that's my narrative. And so I'm
Yeah.
so careful with my language, and I try to be, but it's really like, listen, this is awesome. Your body's giving you feedback. Let's give it the right inputs. And we do bring in supplements that are homeopathic, that are herbs that aren't going to damage anything. But it's also looking at the whole picture to make sure that they're fully supported in their journey.
Yeah. I think what you said was really interesting, that, conventional medicine, conventional Western medicine, we know is, always using the pharmaceutical path, the medication path to cure the symptoms. And the functional medicine world has now really adopted this like um, supplement approach. We need to
Yeah.
bring your body back into balance, you need to nourish your body. And the best way to do that is with all these supplements. But I know functional medicine also looks at lifestyle, also looks at all these other things, but you're sort of saying it goes even deeper. And yet we need, I'm also trained in functional blood work analysis. Everything you said about the labs, I agree with 1,000%. We know that, you know, women, people are depleted. We are depleted in lots of different ways because of our lifestyle, because of stress, because of the food we're eating, because of all these things. So supplements absolutely may play a role. But at the end of the day, there is, as I said sort of earlier, there is imbalance. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess the question is, where is that imbalance coming from? And where sort of, is it just our, crazy 2026 lifestyle? Is it just social media? Is it just what we're exposed to? Or is there something much more profound going on um, in our culture, in our language, in our society that is sort of creating this energetic imbalance at the core?
That is a such a good question. So glad you asked that. And that is where the radical self-love comes into play. Because
Mm.
when you love yourself unconditionally, all the noise from social media, you can simply decide this isn't working for me. I don't need to follow this account. I don't need to show up on social media. If you love yourself, you're going to choose foods that love you back. You're going to sleep like you care about yourself. You're going to choose people that give you, that energize you versus deplete you. And that doesn't mean you go through and write everybody off and all that. It just means that you're conscious of how you're spending your time and who you're spending it with. And the energy around us can be very dense. And it doesn't mean you kind of like, oh, this isn't my reality. It's just that you become a lot more skilled at navigating it. You could come back to your truth and you could anchor the light and you could be a positive force in the world. Um, and you got to learn how to protect your energy. There are some tools and modalities that you can use to protect your energy because it can get very messy and noisy out there. But just as easily as it can get messy and noisy, you could also look at, let's say, a hurricane rips through. You could focus on the horrible parts of it, and that does need attention. Of course, people need support. But there's also so many helpers and so many fundraisers and so many beautiful things that can come out of that. And that happens too in our personal lives where, like at the hardest points of my life, at the time I would have told you I was a victim to my life and I don't know why this is happening and it's this person's fault or whatever. But looking back, it's like, no, hurricanes don't come to destroy. They come to give you an opportunity to rebuild. But when you're in the hurricane and your life is swirling around you, it's like you're so disoriented and you got all this stuff going on. And then all of a sudden the storm quiets and you look around and there's all this rubble like, oh my gosh, I got divorced or I lost my job. And so you have to start picking up these pieces one by one. And next thing you know, you're building something you never even conceived possible before. And so that's where I love to help empower people and seeing, okay, what's the higher perspective here? And really understanding that it doesn't happen to you. It happens for you. And ultimately, when you get to that more grounded, loving state, you could see that it's actually like life is happening through you. And that's where I come back to like learning the skill of radical self-love and compassion. And it's a skill that takes time. It's a journey, really. I'm still on it,
Yeah.
quite frankly. But I think that is just like so, so important for us to communicate to, especially our daughters.
Yes. So I'm going to come to that in 1 second. But I think before that, I want to ask how you see this applying to perimenopausal, menopausal women, specifically for that population where they are in flux biologically. We are going through hormonal fluctuations that, don't necessarily need to lead to symptoms. I'm not talking about the symptom side of it. I'm talking just about the biological side of it, of we know something is shifting. We are, and there is a very strong energetic piece to this sort of
Yep.
time of life. But for perimenopausal, menopausal women who are going through that hurricane, who may feel that everything is shifting, whether it be because of symptoms, whether it be because just they're going through these major transformative life changes, because it is a really transformative time. What do you say, or how do you support women at this particular stage?
When you said that supplements really matter and we need to support the body, this is when it's the most important part because your body is going through so many changes. So the first thing I look at is what's going on with your minerals. Your minerals are the food for every cell and every biochemical function in the body. So just supporting, like running a hair and mineral tissue analysis lab that looks at the minerals and the heavy metals, supporting the body at that foundational level could make all the
Yeah,
difference. Then you look at the liver, because again, remember the liver is the
yeah,
change process, it's detoxification. So when we get to the perimenopause, menopause area, we think it's just our sex hormones. But if that were true, every woman going through perimenopause and menopause would be suffering. It's not
exactly,
just the only factor.
exactly,
It's usually, hey, we've overconsumed wine for 20 years. It's we've been under stress, we've been people pleasing, or we've been iron deficient, or
exactly.
we've had too much takeout and we've traveled extensively and we haven't come home to ourselves. It's just, it's almost like perimenopause comes in and wakes you up to all that. And it becomes very loud. And so when you slow down and realize, what does my body need? What do I need? What is my heart saying? And so we work on the physical body because again, that's where we live. We don't, it doesn't come with a warranty. So best believe you do need to nourish and all the things that we've been talking about. So supporting it from that perspective, but then also appreciating this transition as a huge opportunity because what happens during perimenopause and menopause is your sex hormones drop. And your sex hormones, they're actually during your reproductive years, you go through this cycle, right? And there's different cycles every period, and they're different. You get different emotions with those. And when you're ovulating, that's when they're the highest. And that's when you see everything through rose-colored glasses. And then your luteal phase comes and all those hormones crash. And then suddenly you see everything clearly. And that's when quote unquote fights start to happen. It's because like that's when you come home to your truth. You don't have those rose-colored glasses. When you enter perimenopause and menopause, you're kind of running at that luteal phase all the time. From a hormone perspective, doesn't mean you're going to be emotional all the time, but it means that you see things clearly. So it's an opportunity for you to put the pen down and be like, I don't need to be caretaking for everyone else. I'm going to see things clearly. I'm going to speak my truth clearly. I'm going to come home to myself and feel like I'm going to live a heart-centered life and actually get back in touch with who I am at soul level or my truth or however you want to position it. So I think it's like main character era. I think it's a wild permission slip, like the best permission slip you're ever going to get. Go do badass things. Go do what lights your soul on fire because you're no longer in caretaking mode. It's like the matriarch, the wise woman. Like I love hanging. Like some of my best friends are in their 50s and 60s, and I'm like, I just want to be you when I grow up. I want to be like that emotionally, like unbothered and like have that sense of
Right.
self-confidence. I know who I am. This is who like this is how I'm going to show up. It's awesome. Like we need to be
Yeah.
talking about that positive side effect,
Exactly.
not the fear-based
Exactly.
things like, oh my God, it's going to be horrible and I'm going to be fighting with my
Exactly.
husband and all the things. Like, no, it can be
Exactly.
empowering.
Yeah, everything that you're saying fits in with the way that I describe menopause. Sort of my definition of menopause is the journey that every woman has to take to become her true, authentic self.
Oh, I love
And
it.
the
So good.
focus of perimenopause and menopause is not perimenopause and menopause. That's not the point of the experience. That
Yeah.
is, as you said, like the hurricane. The point of that experience is to get to the other side. Is to get to postmenopause, where all these things that you're saying all of a sudden become the focus and the emphasis and the language of women's sort of behavior, not the suffering and the symptoms and the struggle that they had to potentially go through to reach that next stage, which really is sort of, I think, the purpose of it. So,
Yeah, and on that vein, I feel like the next kind of elephant in the room that we should probably talk about is this hormone replacement therapy. Now, I
oh,
want to say
yes,
to our listeners, the folks that have decided to do that, if that's your right choice, get on with it. But there are so many women that are feeling like they're missing out because they're not going that route, or they feel maybe a little pressured to go that route because it's like, well, if I don't have my hormones, what am I going to have? Just understand it's a natural transition. And so,
but
again, it
I
might be
just want
the
to emphasize that point before you complete your thought. Today, within the menopause space, within the HRT space, you are negligent and you are not looking after your long-term health if you are not on HRT. That's the narrative that is now being spun. Is that if you're not on HRT, you're putting yourself at risk for bone, brain, heart, aging diseases. And that is just that doesn't make
it's
any sense
upsetting.
to me. Yeah.
It's upsetting because no creature in nature goes through hormone therapy. And there's a reason why our sex hormones drop at that age. And frankly, your bone density naturally does drop. Now, does that mean we are negligent and we don't strength train or do anything about it? Of course not. But you're aging, and the reason why your bone density drops is because you're not responsible for bearing children. So that is not something to fear. I think you just need to take care of your body. You need to work out barefoot. You need to get outside. You need to strength train and all those things that you get to do. You don't need to do anything we get to. It's a privilege to live in a body. It's a privilege to take care of yourself. But I just really want to change the narrative. Like you're not missing out if you don't get it. You're missing out if you're missing all the right the foundational things that we've been talking about. Because I'll have women come to my practice, and this woman was in tears. She's like, I wanted to get on. She's 50. Okay. She's not even in menopause. Her period stopped 8 months ago and they told her she was in menopause. And what's the first thing they did without working on any foundations, not supporting the liver, not supporting the gut, they put her on hormone replacement therapy. She's 27 pounds heavier and she's having panic attacks and she's having horrible side effects because they didn't support her foundationally first. Now, I'm not
Wow.
suggesting that maybe that wasn't the right fit for her, but she wasn't in menopause and she wasn't supported. So her liver's not prepared to deal with the synthetic hormone that her body's not even making because of her liver right now, as it stands, she was drinking every day. It's not even equipped to deal with the alcohol consumption, let alone the processed foods or the toxins in her environment. We haven't even gotten to that. And I felt like it was such a wild medical neglect of a woman who really needed support. And they gave
Yeah.
her the wrong thing. Now, if there's like a huge, if you're missing, an ovary or something, there is a time and place for it. And I'm so thankful that that solution is out there for women who really need it. But I just worry that it's become a first line of defense and there's fear mongering and it's the next fad, just like Ozempic is a fad and this is a fad. It's like, if it's a fad, you really should be like, who's making money off of this? Like, what are we
Yeah,
really doing
that
here?
that really is the question here, and people don't like when we ask that question. You know, like what is really going on behind the scenes, especially in the UK, where this, you know, the UK has done an amazing job of putting menopause front and center in the health conversation, and it's really interesting that the UK has been that global leader, that global pioneer. But at the same time, there is some weird thing that has happened in the last couple of years where the menopause conversation has become equated with the HRT conversation. And it's sort of this linear equation of menopause equals symptoms equals HRT. And it's sort of somehow the conversation has been warped rather than talking about it from a what is really going on in our bodies, this empowering conversation or understanding or connecting to our bodies or really sort of unpacking the layers. It's sort of gone into this very sort of twilight zone thing of menopause equals symptoms equals HRT. And that's sort of where we live at the moment. So I appreciate you saying what you're saying because you are challenging some of that stereotypical narrative, which is what we love to do here. But I think when you start to challenge that, women don't like it. And they're like, but HRT is supportive and protective and this and that. And yeah, you know, I'm a hormonal health person. I think hormones are super important. But as you correctly said, it's not just about the reproductive hormones. We have over 50 hormones working in our body. And when the
Yes,
focus is only on those four reproductive hormones, they are critically important, but they are playing a role and they are playing together with this very large endocrine system. And you can't just separate those four hormones from everything else that's going on.
right.
So it's an interesting time to witness where we are and what's happening.
Yeah, and you know what?
Christine,
I'm so thankful that we're talking about menopause because for so long women were suffering and it was swept under the
yeah,
rug. And again, there's nothing more frustrating or isolating to feel like you're going through this transition and have no support. So thank God it's part of the
yeah,
conversation. But it's like, is it the right conversation? You know what I'm saying? And it could be the right choice for some women, but it shouldn't be the first line of defense for everyone. And I will say, we're still programmed like everything is quick. We have ChatGPT right now. You have a question, there's an answer. You want food, it can be delivered. And everybody wants this quick fix, but that's not
yeah,
where the magic happens. There's so much growth that happens between a symptom and resolution. It's who you become in the process. It's
wow,
what's you're willing to unpack, what you're willing to address and grow through. There's the opportunity.
yeah,
And if you
yeah,
just
yeah,
medicate or you placate a symptom, you're just masking it. You losing an opportunity for you to up level, and
yeah.
that is just such a gross injustice to a woman who could have that opportunity. So yeah,
I think that's a really powerful way to sort of summarize everything that we've been speaking about, that space in between. And yeah, I think this is a really strong, powerful conversation that is really going to resonate because you're really sharing things that are not talked about and that are really, really strong and powerful. Um, as we end our conversation, I ask all my guests the same question. This podcast is called Things I Want My Daughters to Know. I'm blessed to have three daughters, and you know, I talk to them a lot about all different things connected to women's health. They know way too much, or maybe you can't ever know too much, but my sons also know way too much about women's
that's
health.
an incredible
But
gift. Good for you.
yeah. So my question to you is, what do you want your daughters to know? Either your, you know, real daughters, your figurative daughters, your goddaughters, your nieces, your cousins, sort of what that next generation of women, what do you want them to know?
I want them to know that having radical self-love is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. And when you're moving from radical self-love, you're not going to equate your self-worth to your body weight, which I have to say is the least interesting thing about you.
Yeah,
You're not going to find yourself in relations or situationships that aren't in your highest and best good because you know you're clear on what your worth is. You're clear on how to love yourself. And it could be a messy journey. Doesn't mean you're never going to have any roadblocks, but you could come back
yeah,
to knowing that your self-worth and your self-love isn't conditioned on anything externally. It's not conditioned on your grades or the job or the title you carry or the money you make. It's you are enough and you are loved because you're an extension of the divine, whatever you believe that to be.
Yeah, that is super powerful. I wish we could like give it to our daughters in our, breast milk, because it
Yeah.
seems that this is something that is so lacking. And it's come up time and time again in podcast interviews when I ask my guests, what is this one thing that you want our daughters to know? This issue of that you are just loved just because keeps coming up, because we are seeing so much in this, you know, teen generation of girls growing up, how they are still in 2026. It is shocking to say they are still being bombarded with images that are unrealistic, unattainable, you know, posted as that is the ideal. And it is just, have we not learned anything yet?
It's just so heartbreaking. And I really do feel like there's a subtle shift going on. I train with high school athletes and I'm the oldest person there, and I love it because there's girls in the gym that they're not talking about being skinny. They're under the barbell and they're lifting serious weight. And I
Yeah,
love it. And I love like
yeah,
looking at them and telling them you're so dedicated, you're so strong. And I never make a comment about their body because it's not about their body. It's who they're becoming when they get stronger.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
do have hope that there is some shift where we're not worried, but we're focused on being strong and healthy. So it's also too like putting your attention there as well and encouraging and just really pumping air and tires when you can. So I'm
yeah,
hopeful that there will be a shift, and it is concerning with AI and all the things that are out there. That's not going to go away, but that's why
yeah,
coming back to self-love is even more important.
yeah. Christine, I've loved talking to you. I love everything that you're doing. Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you? Where are you hanging out online?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also my website at kristinsitek.com.
Amazing. Fantastic. This has been really powerful. I know it's going to resonate with so many women listening. I'm feeling very strongly, sort of a lot of strong emotions as a result of this conversation. So I really, really thank you for joining me. Everyone, thank you for listening. Feel free to write a review, write to me, write to Christine. Let us know what you thought about this conversation. Follow, like, subscribe, all the good things. And most importantly, listen to this episode with your daughter. Share it with other women in your life. And I look forward to seeing you at another episode of the Things I Want My Daughters to Know podcast.